I'm so sorry. So I actually have to go.
I think we got the order wrong.
No, I'm not.
Hang on, I can drive you to the airport.
No, that's a bad idea. But thank you for today, though. It was lovely.
Well, I'll stay in touch this time.
Okay.
Okay. You know what? I'm going to come to Yemen.
You don't have to
No,
say
I'm
that.
going to. I'll fit right in.
No.
I've already got Makhaba and Shukra now.
No, Yemen,
I could surf.
It's not the sort of place
no,
that
really,
you just...
I just think it's the perfect thing for me to do right now. I really do.
Hello, listening people.
Hello.
How are you doing, Mr. Bartek?
Oh, that's me. I'm doing very well. How are you, Mr. Ryan?
I am doing fantastic. I have so many questions for you, Bartek, but do you have the answers?
Are you saying that I'm Ben or something?
I have no questions
Oh.
for you.
I've answered all of them by asking a question.
We are Spit and Polish, and we are here to present our podcast, Pictures Powwow, the original PP, as I like to make sure everyone knows. We are the original PP. There are other podcasts that have P and P in there that they use and say they're PP, but we like to PP. Yeah, it's very fun to say it a lot.
Yeah.
But
Last week we did a movie that we saw someone's pee-pee.
everyone just absorb that in.
I think that might have been the first PP we've seen on PP.
I don't think so.
We've definitely seen one in M, and I think, and we've seen one in hentai form in what was the other one we do?
Mystery Box,
MB,
Men in Black.
Yeah,
MIB.
I can't remember if we saw any in.
That's actually a great question. If we've seen any, okay, so let's all get derailed on penis. Let's get straight to.
What's the TV show we did?
Miles Barlow.
No. The podcast.
Double the Fist.
No, the podcast name.
Oh, a televisual event.
Yeah,
Double the Fist.
ATE.
That had penis.
That had penis?
Double the Fist. Mephisto. There's a scene where he gets naked and he's covered in blood. And he's like, no, officer, you're under arrest. But enough about the law of our own show. How about we give at least a different type of law, the basic rundown. Here on Pictures Powwow, we talk about a movie that has come recommended. And our hosts here are Ryan and Bartek. I'm one of those hosts. Bartek's the other. And you, the listening people, you host in a way too, because you can recommend movies to us and we talk about them. But Bartek and I have a special honor because we are both Polish gentlemen. We're always spitting, and Bartek loves to give us Polish facts. Bartek,
Ryan likes to ask for Polish facts.
Yeah,
rather.
and Bartek loves giving them. Mm-hmm. Did you hear the tone in his voice just now? He loves a little Polish surprise every now and then.
I love it when you ask me beforehand to come with one.
Oh yeah. This is beforehand,
which totally happens.
Yeah, I love. Hey, I prep you the way you need to.
Oh, I thought you were going to sing. I prep you, you prep me.
So, what is a Polish children's nursery rhyme? Do you have any?
I don't know if it's a nursery rhyme or if it's a lullaby. But there is one that I remember. It was kotki dwa, szare bure, obydwa.
And what does that translate into? Does it have anything, or is it just too much?
I don't know one of the lines, but it's generally like, two kittens. I don't know what Shadabura means. And obydwa means both of them.
Okay, two kittens, both of them. Great song.
Don't forget,
Did your mother sing this to you as a small child?
I think so, and I remember my great aunt singing it to my second cousins. So, yeah, it seems like it was more of a general thing. And I think a few years ago, I looked up on YouTube, like, oh, is there anyone singing this? And there was this one video I found of a woman singing it, but it was like really slow and in like a low voice. I'm like, oh, it's making it sound kind of creepy. It was cuter when I remember it.
It is
my
creepy.
My song about the two cats, both of them, was a lot cuter in my memory.
They're devil cats. Cats are servants of the devil. Wasn't that a belief or something or other for
like
the Black Death?
Probably like black cats or something.
wasn't the thing with the bubonic plague is they killed all of the like the cats because they thought they carried it because
They were the ones that killing the rats.
But cats were like a devil like thing because it was all religiosity. But we aren't here to talk about the bubonic plague unless you're talking about the Australian film industry, because we are talking about an Aussie film that Bartek recommended to us.
I'm such an Aussie.
Oi, oi, oi. We're both Aussies and Polish. That's why we're in the top 10 Australian Aussie podcasts. I don't have...
That's not the case.
No. How do you know?
Because I haven't looked it up.
Exactly. You don't know.
And you haven't linked it to me.
But we are here to talk about Any Questions for Ben, a film that you recommended, Bartek. So how about you tell the listening people a little bit about what this is all about?
Any Questions for Ben is a film that came out in, I believe, 2012, starring Josh Lawson. And it is a film that is basically, he described it as a quarter-life crisis, where it's about a 27-year-old guy who has really good, he's had a lot of jobs, he's had a lot of short-term relationships, and he seems to be doing pretty well for himself, but he's feeling very empty inside. He doesn't feel like he's achieved anything.
And then a woman comes into his life and out of his life, and things change. Oh man. Any Questions for Ben? It is a Working Dog Productions, which is a fairly well-known Australian film group here. They are a comedy group. They've done stuff like The Castle, which is a film that we have covered before.
Mm-hmm.
Rob Sitch, the director, is a person of note. He's done a variety of film and television, stuff that we have enjoyed and stuff that I've majorly loved. And he even appears in the film as the principal of the high school.
Right.
And that's him. And so he's a very lovable screen presence, as well as just what he does behind the scenes. And he very much is obsessed or has a fascination with Australian culture, Australiana, Melbourne, even the politics of Australia. And so I was a bit surprised that this was a Rob Sitch joint when it started. I didn't know anything about it, because now we're going to get into our relationship and histories with this. I may be like many of the listening people out there. This is new to me. I haven't watched it before until this podcast came along. And of course, everyone, make sure to check out the film for yourself if you don't want to get spoiled on anything. But I will at least spoil things now. I had a roller coaster ride of emotions with this film. I was caught off guard at many, many points, just by the people who showed up behind the camera and in front of it. The tone of the movie and the pacing of the film was quite a lot to take in. I thought I had this pegged as a film. I was like, okay, we're meeting this hotshot guy played by Josh Lawson. He's a young dude. He's handsome. He's getting ladies. He's a playboy. He's devil-may-care. He's chewing through life and not really stopping to smell the roses. He doesn't see the forest for the trees. And we're going to have a story about a woman enters his life, and he's suddenly going to have a bit of a journey and realize that he has to appreciate things in life. And although that is the outline of the film, the way it goes about it does not follow that trajectory. It very much is a film following, and at least this is from my first viewing standpoint, and we'll talk about your relationship with the movie and your viewing experience, but this is a story about a stagnant character. A character who is given all of the opportunities in the world to be better and refuses them at every call, for no reason other than it's their nature to refuse to change.
Yeah.
And those are very, very tricky to pull off. Very tricky to pull off those kind of stories. So overall, I didn't realize any of this going in, and so it was quite a lot to process, and the film has such an aggressive editing style. Names are popping up on the screen. Music is constantly going throughout.
There's a lot of songs.
There's a lot of songs. What is this, Suicide Squad? It's just song after song. So just to give the firstest of impressions, I was overwhelmed by the movie. Now, you recommended this, so tell us why this film. Why did you recommend this, and what is your experiences with Any Questions for Ben?
Before I do you have any idea why? Because I can't remember.
No,
I can't remember.
You
if I've
just
talked about
said
it
you
before.
have a history with it, and I
Okay.
said we'll leave it for the podcast.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if I've ever brought it up before or not. So this is a film I've never seen before, but I've been aware of it. And to cut right to the chase, it's because I was an extra in the film.
Rachel asked, "Oh, is Bartek an extra in this movie? Is this why we're watching this?" And I said, "I don't remember that. I know you've been an extra in an In Excess TV miniseries."
Yeah, I'm in like the first 25 minutes somewhere in like the crowd with a friend of ours from uni, Sean. So when I was in either year 11 or year 12, I got a extra role for this film for the titular scene, the Any Questions for Ben scene during the school careers night where he's talking to the students in the audience. And it was always a thing in my head of like, okay, I remember where I was sitting, and I remember like the mise-en-scene of the room, and I was having a look at the cameras, and I was very certain they're like, oh, yeah, they wouldn't see me. I wouldn't get seen in the film. I'm too off to the side. I wouldn't be there. But it's always been a thing in my head of like, I have to see the movie at some point just to confirm the fact that, you can't see me at any point in the film. So I've always been meaning to check it out. And I reached a point in the podcast where it's like, oh, I've got to pick a non-American choice. Let's finally give Any Questions for Ben a run. So I can finally...
A film starring yourself.
Yes. You were pointing out before, like, oh, there's so many people that appear in the film that I recognize. I'm like, sure there is. I gave it away right there. You can see me in the film.
Oh.
There is a shot where you can see me.
But you don't have a beard.
No.
I wouldn't recognize you.
No, my school at the time...
Wouldn't let you.
Well, yeah, my school is like, oh, you have to be clean-shaven.
And did you do a good job?
So the shot that I appear in is when the love interest is finished talking, because she goes for a very long time, Alex. She ends off by saying what thank you is in Arabic, like shukran. And then it cuts to a shot of the audience from, like, I guess Ben's perspective. It's a bit more to the right on the stage. And I am, like, right on the edge of the screen on the right. I'm like, oh my God, I'm actually in the film.
Nice.
And that's the only shot where you can properly see me. In other ones, I think you might be able to see, like, part of me. But yeah, I have my one shot. And in terms of if I did a good job or not, I think that was the shot where they were clapping at the end of hers, and I don't think I looked that impressed. So
wow, you didn't care about Africa.
I guess I fucked up.
Since you have an involvement in this film, a bias,
yes,
but also a perspective.
I've given a full disclosure.
You've given full disclosure.
They gave me Krispy Kreme afterwards.
Oh,
so I've been bribed.
Oh, okay.
It was
You've
my
been bribed.
first time having Krispy Kreme.
I was going, oh, interesting. Was this your first experience on a film set or production?
No, I'd done like Neighbours before. I'd probably been in like a commercial or two.
So you have had some experience by this point, even though you're a teenager in high school. Now, what was the filming of it like? Do you remember what the general vibe was? And you seemed a bit surprised just now that I said the director of the film is also the principal, like the character who plays the principal in this. Was he around doing directing at the time, or was he being an actor? I've always wondered how that works.
I honestly don't remember that, but he must have been on stage the whole time, because I remember the framing of like, oh yeah, they were sitting in like a kind of curved line.
Yes.
And they were going, during each of the shots, it was like, basically like the fragments of like the full speech was being said, and I could have sworn there was some shots of Josh Lawson speaking, but I remember there were bits of like him talking to the crowd, between takes. I guess the director was on stage during that time, but I don't quite remember if he was directing or not.
And what was the general atmosphere of the production like when they were doing this scene that you were involved in? What was Josh Lawson like? What was the vibe? How were the kids reacting or acting up or whatever?
My fondest memory is actually of one of the kids that was sitting near me, which I guess you could see him in the shots too. I remember because the crowd was made up of both actual students from that school, actual students from Brighton Grammar, and then just extras dressed in the uniforms. And I was sitting near one of the kids who was an actual student of the school. And he was very excited. He was looking at me being like, dude, I'm on a film set, and you're not a student here, but you're dressed like one. It's like you're a real
Nice.
student here. And I just always remembered that. I'm very fond of that memory.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Him just being very excited. I felt like, oh, yes, I'm like in disguise.
Nice. I've done a couple of extra gigs myself, and there's a film that I actually could recommend where I actually have a very prominent shot or two as an extra in a club scene. The film's called Cut Snake, if anyone wants to find it. And I've never watched the entire film. It's actually a film I don't like very much, but I got paid for it, so nice. And it was it was a period piece. It was in the 70s.
Did you get donuts?
They did feed us, but they did not give us donuts.
Oh.
But they did pay me a good amount. But I remember the atmosphere in that set being miserable.
Oh, okay.
Because it was a club scene, so there's a lot of technicals had to be done.
I've been in club
it,
scenes before, yeah, for Neighbours.
And the director was getting very annoyed because the camera has to weave through the crowd, but that means you have to have a camera on a rig or handheld. There was a whole thing. But any questions for Ben, although you have this personal connection to it? You had never seen the film before now.
No, never seen it before.
So tell us a bit about what you knew going in and what was your experience watching it?
So because I was in that scene, the title actually made sense to me. It's like, oh, it's referencing the line from the scene that I was in. And my understanding of the synopsis was that was kind of a not a turning point, but like a
inciting incident.
That's exactly the phrase I was looking for. The kind of the inciting incident or the inciting moment of the film that makes him start to question himself. So I figured, okay, that's going to be an early part of the film. I didn't know that the film was 2 hours long. So when I finally got around to watching it and it was, like a 5-minute scene, it's like, oh, it's a very small fraction of this wider film. It was very interesting to see. And I remember, I think I mentioned this last week that I did ask someone that we went to uni with in our first or second year, like, oh yeah, you heard of this film? Any questions for Ben? Is it any good? And they had like a really enthusiastic response, like, yeah, it's a good film. So I've just always had it in the back of my mind, like, oh, so when I do get around to watching it, whether I see myself or not, at least I'm in for a good ride, kind of thing.
And
I thought it was okay. I think similar to you, kind of a bit of a roller coaster thing, where it was very long, and not a lot happens, but also not quite that much happens.
Yes. Now, again, stressing for the listening people out there, if you have not seen any questions for Ben, give it a watch because or at least hear us out, because it is a strange film. It's so strange. Now, it's so bizarre how this film has such a ripple in our lives, because my wife, Rachel, I said at the end of the last discussion, has probably seen this movie. She loved, especially back in her teens and early 20s, to see these Australian films. And she saw this in the cinema before she came down here to Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
It was the last film she saw before she came down to Melbourne and started university. And she said it was a terrible time, and she was really bummed out that this was the last experience she was going to have of her old life before she started her new journeys.
Yeah.
And I heard that near the end of the movie, that story, so it didn't contaminate my feelings on the film.
Yeah, I remember last week you mentioned that at the end of the episode, and then we went straight to her and asked, and we didn't quite get that part of the story.
We just got a vibe of, oh yeah, it's one of the last films I saw before I came down here. But I'm just going to say, I hated this movie. We just watched a film from Poland that was artsy, didn't have coherent plot or dialogue, was interminably long, and yet flew by in pacing compared to this film. Nearly 2 hours, and
I think it was over 2 hours.
So long. So long, and it's because the character himself is stopping any progression. And that's the point of the film, but at the same time, it fails because the likability factor of the main character is zero because of a multitude of reasons that we will obviously discuss and banter about and maybe disagree on. But I loathed this, and it wasn't a sudden, quick, oh, I hate this type of movie. over the course of it, I was just getting madder and madder and madder at this. And remembering Rob Sitch is behind this, I got even madder because Rob Sitch usually has like his finger on the pulse for like Australiana, for likable characters, for the Aussie battler, or the tyranny of bureaucracy, or whatever the case may be, underdog stories. And this is a story about someone who you would never describe as struggling. Somebody you would never describe as not privileged in life. And you can make that work. And my biggest takeaway was this. Hugest takeaway is the magic of storytelling, the magic of filmmaking is, I genuinely believe this, is you can tell a story about anyone, any type of person, reprehensible or moral. It doesn't matter. You can, if you have an angle to it, such as Train Spotting. It's a story about degenerate heroin addicts. It's a great film. Their characters worthy of having a story to be told about. Or you could have movies about serial killers or genocide or maniacs or whatever the case is. You can tell a story about anyone. Hence The Castle, a comedy film that we love and we've done on the pod and is an Australian classic, is like a champion move on Rob Sitch's part because it's a story about just a regular blue-collar family who are just getting by and they find themselves in this extraordinary situation and yet they still keep the same mentality. You could see, like, we actually talked about it in that episode, like, you could see in a Hollywood version of that they wouldn't be that type of family because those type of people aren't, quote-unquote, worthy of stories. Any questions for Ben is one in which it really comes up to me and says, are you sure about that belief? Because Ben is a character I kept pulling my hair about and saying, I don't care about your story. I don't care about this type of person. I don't think this is someone worthy of spending time with. I don't feel for them. They don't change. The only way they change is they moan about their problems. That's the new development. The development is Ben just starts to moan and whine about existential quandaries. But that's all he does. He just vocalizes it, and that's his big change throughout the film. And then the film rewards him at the end. And I just couldn't stand it. I just couldn't stand it. So my big thing is, like, I have this genuine belief that you can tell a story about anyone or anything if you do it well. And this film just did not do it well.
No,
I was just constantly being like, why are you worthy of my time? Why are you worthy of being a film?
It felt like this film was missing certain beats from this type of story because it takes a little while to introduce that whole aspect of the sort of quarter life crisis, like what am I doing with my life thing. Like I said, it feels like it was like 25 minutes in the film that you get the careers night scene. And having seen other films before that kind of deal with this, like, for example, the Ben Stiller, Walter Mitty, or other films like that, it feels like that's a thing of, like, when you get the character to start thinking that, then they'll start taking actions to deal with it. But it feels like this film just kept kind of, and I guess that was the point of the film, meandering in his everyday life. And, what is he going to do next without finally taking a big step to do something a bit different?
The issue even further is, if we're going to spend the time meandering in his everyday life, I need a greater understanding of what that everyday life is. Because the pacing of the film is so broken. It's slow, and yet the scenes are all super fast. And anytime you think you're getting a moment of breathing, music will drop, and you'll just get a music montage. This is, and I say this as I'm going to use a comparison of a version that does this well. Completely different genre, completely different style, but Bend It Like Beckham had a similar structure in terms of its pacing. It would have scenes where they would be poignant, but they're quick and short, and they're interrupted by a musical number, like a needle drop, and then we move on. But that film had a heart. That film had an identity. That film had, like, a story worthy being told. and humor to it that was much more like deliberate. Well, in this, there's this whole subplot about his job and how he's marketing to women. And at the end of the movie, he's successful at it and he stays at the job. I couldn't tell you how he succeeded at it because the movie was just so rushed over stuff. I couldn't tell you how that job worked, Evan. Like, was there any struggles? There's this amazing scene or potential amazing scene where his boss doesn't leave, sits down and says, I want to hear your ideas. We cut to another scene where he's like kind of not telling his friends about how that didn't go well. I want to see that scene. What's the point if you don't show me his boss realizing that this man who's only just hot air has no talent? But then the rest of the film never deals with that. So
yeah, that whole subplot, the finer details of it happen off screen.
And that's every subplot in a weird way. Here's the craziest thing. I'm sorry, I'm really ranting about this because it got my blood boiling.
That's fine. I'm agreeing with a lot of it.
Why? And I know why, because it's a part of the story, but fuck it. Alex needs to be in the film. She needs to be in the film. That's as simple as that. Like, if I'm going to care about this relationship that keeps not getting to get to be, I need to actually have those characters in the film because, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to just lay it out clearly, the only reason that they're attracted to each other is for superficial reasons. I don't think there's anything actually genuine. By the end of this 2-hour film, the only reason that they're together that I can make from what the film has presented is they're hot. They're both hot people who know each other. Why is she any different to any of the other amazing women he's encountered in his life? There's this moment where she's like, oh, I never thought you noticed me until now. And I was like, how would he not notice you? You're hot. And they show pictures of her when she was younger. I'm like, she was hot then too. In fact, bigger question is, how did he not try to do this earlier?
I remember she asked that question. I genuinely didn't know the answer to it because when she was first brought up in the film, you know, he needed some prodding to remember who she was. I was like, oh yeah, I remember her. She was nice. So it's like, oh, so was she just in the friend group, or was she someone that you genuinely did take notice of?
And the film never challenges that.
Eventually they get to the point where it's like, yeah, you were the person in the cafe who you were just surrounded by people, and I wanted to be one of those people. It's like, oh, okay, that's the backstory then.
She's like the hottest person, and we saw like them. Oh my god. I don't believe it. This is fucking Amanda Seyfried in Jennifer's Body all over again. It's like, oh, the hottest chick and no one notices her. Yeah, right.
Well, she was frumpy in that one.
Yeah, at least she had glasses. This chick, fucking smoking blonde. She was like Miss Tasmania in real life. Like, she's a fucking supermodel. Like, and she's a good actress. She's done a bunch, but like, I can't believe it. But
well, he's gotten big celebrities in bed before, so.
Okay, my blood's boiling. Throw it over to you. What do you want to talk about? What are things that you want to get off your chest, or things that worked or didn't? Just please take the reins. I'm just fire on the side of my head.
Ryan needs a drink of ice cold water.
Oh yeah. Cool me down.
Go for it. No, for me it was very much a similar kind of journey of me wanting to be on the film side, me seeing, you know, what type of character this is. It's a privileged character, and just because they're privileged doesn't mean they can't go through, you know, a depressive episode. But like I said before, it felt like there just needed to be some beats there where he goes out and does something. And I guess they were kind of trying to do that with like the best friend character who's, you know, always up for anything. And you have scenes of them going to like, you know, the lake to chill out, or them going skiing, or them going bungee jumping. But it always comes back with that character to, you know, he's kind of just like a bit of a himbo who, you know, just wants to have fun, and like he can't actually have a, you know, heart to heart with that character. So the scenes always with him end up going nowhere, or he's just like comic relief where we have, you know, I guess the equivalent of the third act breakup where they're trying to have a conversation. It's like, oh, just gotta get my laptop, gotta get my charger. And it just feels like the priorities of the film were just all over the place.
They also don't follow up on what's clearly there. That friend is, and maybe not by design of his own being, but he's an enabler to Ben's problems. But the film doesn't want to do anything about that. The film's not interested in that. So what's the point? what's the point of that character? Oh, he's kind of funny. He'll have one or two moments, but like we spend so much time of Ben not doing stuff and getting support for not doing it with that friend. And like, again, do something. Do something. Have a moment where it's like, oh, holy shit. Like, a part of when you're in your 20s is realizing that sometimes you've outgrown your high school friends or your university friends or work friends and realizing maybe they're holding you back or you're holding them back. That could have been a story for Ben with this side character.
Yeah, he had so much more going on with the other friend, like the roommate friend and his fiance.
Who outgrew him, who outgrew Ben. That's like the story. So it's like, there's something there with that. But yeah, you said it. Like, just because the character is of privilege does not mean we can't have a story where they're suffering from a depressive episode or existential quandaries. You know, we all go through it. It's something that's human, relatable. But what makes it difficult is he has all of the benefits to aid his problems. So we're just watching a character not use them. Why? And what do we get out of that? Give me more. Give me more. The thing is, give me more. But you're not. The movie's not. So you're just watching this rich boy sit there drinking a coffee or going skiing in New Zealand and going, oh, why is my life like this? And I'm sitting here struggling in real life going, why do I fucking care? You're not trying. You're not trying. Like, at least try to do it. Like, I don't know. It's this unrelatability, privileged stuff. Like, I've had a problem over the years with rich wanker characters.
Yeah, when I was watching this, I'm like, oh, this is the type of character Ryan loves.
And I have loved them sometimes, genuinely. Like, we did the Nanny Diaries recently, and that was like a big topic point of like, oh,
that was the big one. It's like, oh, Ryan, you're actually praising one of these characters.
Because they've done
really well.
They done really well. They had complexities. Ben has no complexities. He wants to have complexities. That's his complexity. And it's like he wants to be deeper than he is, but the problem is he is shallow.
Yeah, and there are a lot of scenes where he, again, was trying to have a heart-to-heart with people. Like, he had the one with his friend where his friend fell asleep. You had the one with the dad in the little caravan. But, yeah, it felt like those scenes just kept playing up the, kind of comedy of it. And then, that didn't let the character go anywhere.
There's something, again, how much of the things that we bring up that are deeper are actually in the movie, or we're just wanting there to be? Because I was going to just leap in of like, there is a truth about, in Australian masculinity, it's hard to open up about these topics. Hard to connect about something deeper, about something without an answer to it. The scene with his dad, the dad gives him advice, but Ben just can't accept that advice. Or he talks to his male friends and they just can't get it. Or women talk to him and give him advice, but Ben blows it off because he's a bloke and he doesn't need to take it from women. These are genuinely things that are embedded in the Australian male psyche. It's something that has been explored in many movies, many pieces of media here. And I don't know if this is even doing that. I just think it is having that by just having the characters go through the motion of those things. But I think of Idiot Box, where Idiot Box was all about that. We had a main character whose best friend was an enabling dickhead played by Ben Mendelsohn, while our main character is Mr. I want to be a poet, and I want to go on a date with this girl, and I want to do something with my life, but is there a point to it because I'm a bloke and I have to be a bloke? And there's so many films that we've done, like even Romper Stomper, where that took it to like an extreme where you have it with a bunch of neo-Nazis, but like that it's tapping in there. But I'm talking about all this. What I'm doing, I feel, is more legwork than the film is even trying to get into. It's
like there's just so many moments where taken in isolation, I can see them working. Like, again, to bring up that friend who gets married, in the scene immediately after they reveal the proposal thing, the scene where Ben whispers to him,
That was a funny scene.
That was a funny scene, and it actually was a kind of representation of what you were talking about there, where, you know, he started off asking the indirect question of like, hey, is this you know what you want to do with your life? And then he was bringing up all these other things, you know, but it's like commitment, and we were going to be bros together, and then you're going to have kids. And the friend was responding like, yeah, well, I think this will be my adventure. And Ben kind of ends that whole conversation with like, oh, yeah, good, yeah, I was just checking. It's like, you know, he's throwing the emotional aspect of himself away from everything and throwing it and, you know, playing it off as like, oh yeah, I was just asking for your well-being, mate. It's all good.
I get just, what is the intent? What is the intent? So often was the question I had up in the air. Oh, there's a tennis superstar storyline. Oh, is this what's going to be in the movie? No, it's gone. Well, what was the intent of that? Or, oh, there's a love triangle now in which the girl of this guy's dream has a fiance or a partner, and they seem like the best person ever. Oh, okay. Oh, no, then it's gone.
Yeah.
What was the point?
That relationship ended off screen, even though the guy was built up to be like, this guy actually seems pretty decent. Like, how are you going to, you know, get one over on an actual genuinely good guy?
And there's just so many things like that, so many characters that serve that. I don't know. I think this element would be handled differently today, but Ben has like a mentor that he didn't ask for, but he's like a ladies' man mentor. And I don't know if that character would be done the same today, because that type, he's an Andrew Tate type, just to say it. And the film does this very bizarre move where at least I wasn't clued into the fact that this guy is married and happy and has a life. I thought he was just like a businessman philanderer. But they do this bizarre move in which he demonstrates, no, Ben, you can be a misogynistic, carefree, dickhead playboy and things work out for you. And I don't know if that's don't know if that's the message the film wants to have in there. Because I thought they were going to reveal, like, this guy keeps giving him, like, hotshot cars and he's trying to get Ben to live this life, and you would reveal, like, this guy's alone. You don't want to be this guy forever. But the film actually says, no, Ben, you can still keep being this guy forever and things are actually good and you'll get what you want. So why does Ben have to change then? If they have a character who actually gives him inspiration to keep going, proving that you don't have to change, Ben, things will be good. What was that?
Yeah, that was... It was a funny one because, yeah, throughout the whole film, he is kind of like the aggressive enabler of Ben. You know, he's the one that his catchphrase is saying the F word every now and then, to the point where, like, his family also say it.
Yep.
And yeah, he's always the one who is saying, yeah, Ben, you are in this privileged lifestyle. You should be happy with being in that lifestyle, and you should learn to embrace that rather than, you know, feel empty about it.
Or change. If it wasn't for that character, we wouldn't have the final shot of the film. Picture frames.
Oh, yes. Yeah, he's the one. In the scene where you finally see his house and his family, Ben basically boils down the idea of happiness to, you know, being in a situation where you can settle down somewhere and have picture frames of your memories.
Question: why wasn't that exact same scene, including the picture frames, Ben's dad? Why does it have to be this sleazy businessman gigolo who serves as like a dark reflection of what Ben is?
Yeah, who's introduced as being like
a lech.
There's this not even that, but like this character who's a presence in my life who I'm not particularly all that, you know, fond of. I don't know.
He's intrusive.
He's literally introduced as like he's my mentor that I didn't ask for.
And Ben only comes to him when he needs a devil on his shoulder. So then why does the devil on his shoulder character actually prove to be the most helpful? And like the film ends on the note of the picture frame.
You're asking, why wasn't that the dad? And the dad was reminding me at a lot of times of other dads that we've seen in similar-ish types of films. The ones I'm thinking of are a bit more, you know, comedic, but the John Goodman dad in Confessions of a Shopaholic and the dad from Bubble Boy. I know they're very wildly different answers, but they both had the thing of like, oh, they're kind of like the goofy dad who, has some funny quirks about them, but then in, their final scenes, they reveal themselves to have a bit more depth to them, and they ask like a hard-hitting question or give like a hard-hitting bit of advice. And you had that with John Goodman with the whole, like, I sold my caravan, it doesn't define me, you're what defines me, I want your happiness. Or you had the dad scene in this where, they're in the caravan and he does try to give the good advice.
I was also thinking of Terry Bradshaw in Father Figures.
Mm-hmm.
This film is a mess. That's the best way to describe it. And again, there's many, 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 many problems, but likability of main character is a huge problem here. It's just a huge problem because when you have that moment of the scene you're in, the Any Questions for Ben, that should spark off something that changes the character, but it like only temporarily does, and then for the rest of the film he just stays the same and moans. I want to see him take action. Even stories about characters that are failures and live in inaction have to take action in the story for it to progress. And you can make a story about how a character fails to act out on things, but this one just isn't. It just doesn't know how to do it. I think of like so many great examples of stories over the years that have done this and can make me think of gross characters in a sympathetic light. But I just kept thinking of Ben as like this detestable person. Like, what did you actually think about Ben as like an individual as well as a lead character?
So for most of the film, because I was expecting there to be a bit more action taken, I was trying to give him a bit more of a benefit of the doubt of like, okay, well, this character is going to eventually, have a more compelling arc, take more compelling action. In the early parts of the film, where obviously he hasn't had that inciting moment yet, I was at least amused at like some of his like kind of fast talking attitude, because he does have a few exchanges with people that, were a bit amusing, like especially with his the boss that he has throughout the film. I remember there was a moment where the boss was introducing this brand that like hasn't been popular in ages, and Ben was like, oh yeah, get rid of it. And it's like, no, make it more popular. It's like, oh good, yeah, I was just testing you. I thought that was a really funny exchange. He had a few other moments, like when he was at the couple's apartment and he was like, oh, this is a really good apartment, but it's just really missing like a concrete circle. And there's like an ornament like right next to him, concrete circle. So there were these little moments of like, oh yeah, he's kind of a charming, funny character, but then, with the fact that he isn't changing enough to be, the kind of main character I want, eventually got to the point where, that kind of attitude, whether intentional or not, was kind of grating in a way. It's like, you should be beyond this, or you should be taking this a bit more seriously.
Do you find him being privileged in the way that they handle it an issue?
I don't. I don't think it really helped the fact that, he didn't develop enough for my liking. But like you, I do believe that, yeah, any character can be in a situation or can be compelling to watch. And the fact that he is a privileged character going through something on paper, is a good enough thing for me, because it lends itself to that notion. If this was a character who was down on his luck, completely miserable, then yeah, obviously he would want to change or get better. But the fact that, he is in a position where, by all accounts, he should be good, it sets itself up for an interesting character to explore.
But they just don't have that follow through.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying throughout this whole recording, where it's like something was missing here. You had a setup, you had a, in a way, non-conventional main character for this type of story, quote unquote, but it just didn't deliver in the way that I wanted it.
Yeah, this is okay. So there's a current trend of eat the rich type films that are very much like, oh, rich people are evil, fuck the rich.
A lot of the South Korean films we've done.
South Korean films. There's a bunch of American movies. It's a thing, right? It's a topic. This film blows all of them out of the water, because I fucking hated the rich people in this movie. I hated by the end of it, I hated all of them. I didn't want to spend time with any of these fucking rich wankers who are going to the Melbourne Cup. Oh, once they got to the Melbourne Cup, I was like, oh boy, here we go. Of course, these are the people who'd go there.
When they had the bachelor party where they were dressed up in fancy clothes, I'm like, oh god.
Yeah, they're just people who take up time. They take up space. They're leeches. Ben's job has no purpose, no meaning, no anything. And yet he stays. Like, that's the big growth, is he stays at a job that when the title of the film comes up, it's in relation to the fact that what he does is empty. What do you do, Ben? This job that when he tries to describe it to literally you in the audience, there's no response because it's a meaningless, fruitless, endeavorless job of life. No one cares. And the movie's big congratulations for Ben is he stays at that job. Bravo. Awesome.
I wasn't allowed to ask a question, but even if I was, I didn't have any.
There's just there's a lot of backlash for the film when you look at it online. It's not highly rated. And a lot of reviews are very similar in the venom towards just, I have no questions for Ben. Fuck Ben. The fact that the Yemen office building is the mosque in Carlton is very funny. Stuff like that. It's very Melbourne-centric.
That, at the very least, was nice to see. It's like, oh, that's where we're from.
Yeah, but...
I know that's a low bar, but...
It's a low bar when it also makes me hate the city. Because the city is a vice for the character. But so is the whole world. Like, the guy has the whole world on a silver platter and he fucking pisses on it. And no one, like... I needed more scenes of, like, Alex at the end confronting him. You know, I need more scenes of characters, like, actually challenging him and confronting him, not just being like... Oh, well, I've given up on you, Ben.
Yeah,
Oh, well, I've given up on you. I'm just going to look out the fucking beautiful, gorgeous view of the city I have. Oh, fuck you. Like, she's any better, like the fiance of one of his friends, played by Felicity Ward, who, by the way, Felicity Ward is very, very, very funny. Gets nothing funny to do in this. She's just the wet blanket. Thankless role.
That final scene where, you know, the love confession scene... The fact that she was, you know, so immediately into, you know, accepting it, it felt like with your character, there would have been a bit more pushback or questions to ask.
Honest question for you. Why does she love him? Why does she leave this perfect man for Ben? Why does she get with him in the end?
I mean, you know, the question of, like, why does she leave this perfect man for Ben? Like, I don't even know if she did do that. Maybe that's something that you just bring into the film. Like, oh, she left him for some reason, and it wasn't because he had darkness. That's all we know. So it's like, oh, well, you know, did she still keep holding a torch for Ben the whole time or not? Yeah, it's like you were saying, the fact that she had to keep going to Yemen, like every time she was around in Melbourne, and there was a plan, like, you know, an offer for a plan. It's like, oh no, I got to go back to Yemen. It was just another moment for me of like, oh, okay. So you're going to leave the film again?
And Ben's just going to do nothing until you return.
Oh, yeah, I'll contact you. I'll get the shots. I'll visit Yemen. Eventually it got to when she had the whole thing of like, oh, why can't you just tell me to stay? It's like, well, I think your situation's a bit more complicated than just asking you to stay.
And you don't have enough of a connection for that to be viable for me, the audience, to believe for him to say that. Because what you just said... Yes, that's true. But in a movie, in a narrative, you can reach a point where the character runs to the airport and says, no, stay. And you go, oh, yeah, I believe that. Even if you have some quibbles. This doesn't even get to that point. Why would he ever even think of asking that? I wouldn't if I had the amount of time of relation that he had. The way he had. I've never spoken to someone for 6 hours before. Wow, Ben. Wow, really deep, that one. Really got me heartbroken that you're not the type of person who can communicate with. Yeah, it makes me just loathe it makes me loathe people. This film, like, this is a great remedy for if you're really liking life right now. It made me fucking loathe everything. I was so bitter at the end of this film. I was just fuming. And then when they played, like, during the credits, cut scenes from the film, I'm like, well, why are you doing this? And why didn't you put it in the movie if it's so... Why are we here?
I kind of actually like those cutscenes.
No, but I don't like that they're just, and here's the credits, we're going to play these. Just put them in the movie if they're good enough to show us. I don't...
I like them in the sense that, like, at the point in the film where they would have played, near the end, the film was at a pace where it's like, we have to get beyond, like, the gags. We have to get you to Yemen. We got to get the final romantic scene. So I saw that as, like, kind of like a reveal of, like, there was actually a bit of a whole sub-story tension happening there.
Mm-hmm.
And, the fact that you're jumping ahead in time a few times there, I found it kind of amusing.
Sure.
And I thought it worked better not being in the film itself. But, yeah, I guess putting it in the credits was a bit weird.
Any other thoughts on any questions for Ben? Any other things you want to talk about?
When young Bartek was on set in the audience, if he were to interrupt the production, stand up and then say something, what could I have said to have fixed the film?
Stop filming.
Stop filming.
Stop filming. Oh my lord. This is the worst film we've watched this year for me on the pod. Thus far, we're about halfway through the year now.
What other films have we watched?
This is the worst one. I don't think I've disliked any of the films, really, that we've done on the pod thus far in the year. I think I've been...
I'm just trying to remember what we have seen.
Lagan I enjoyed more than this, and it was double the length and yet felt like half of it compared... Like, this film is such an aggressive thing. It doesn't want you to like it, but it's clear that that's not the intention. The intention is it wants you to think of this hip, young misogynist as a lovable guy who's realized the error of his ways. But the the film doesn't really contend with the stacking up of issues that have existed with the character himself. Like, I just said it, but Ben's a misogynist. And I don't just throw that stuff around willy-nilly. He is a misogynist. He uses women like sex dolls. He loathes them. He's frightened of them when they're assertive to him, or hates them when they're assertive on their own. And his literal job is to market to women, and he loses all confidence in himself, stumbles, and seems pissed off that he has to cater to women, not them cater to him. The film never, not for one moment, discusses it. Not for one moment does it ever realize that he's a misogynist. Not once. No woman is coming up to him saying that. The most you get is the scene in which he dumps Fleur, and they're just like, you're a bit of a dickhead. That's it. But, like, he is through and through a sexist piece of shit. Not just that he uses women for sex, but like all of these things I just mentioned. The tennis star, she's a great example of it, where he's like nervous during the sex because she's the assertive one, not him. But what was that for? I think it was just there for a bit of comedy, but it was played so low energy in terms of that I didn't find it funny. Like, Rachel's like, I think it's played for comedy. And I'm like, oh, okay. Because I was waiting for the film to be like, it's going to address this, that Ben has such a...
It's like an early sign of something being revealed.
That Ben has such a problem with women.
Yeah, problems with, like, intimacy or relationships. Which I guess on the relationship angle it kind of does.
But it's not about women. It's about just relationships at that point. Like when the girl of his dreams comes up and says, are you making me like a trophy, a girl of your dreams? It's more about just him idolizing her as someone he romantically is interested in rather than objectifying her, which is the part of what he's doing. I don't know. Like, what do you feel about that? About a character who has a lot of misogynistic traits, and does the film in your eyes deal with it at all? Or if it does, how so? How did you like it? Or if it doesn't, what are your opinions on that?
No, I guess it was just focusing on his commitment issues, because the film, really emphasizes the fact that he's never had a relationship that lasts over 3 months. He has the conversation with his mentor character about how he's never had to ask someone out. It's just always worked out in his favor. And so when he's now at this, adult stage, reaching his 30s, one of the characters has a line about, like, time is for teenagers. You've got to kind of buckle down and move ahead. He does have that question about, how do I do this if I, despite all these relationships I've had, don't actually have experience?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but what about his treatment of women? Like, he gets in relationships. He works with women and he has to work for women and he fucking detests it the whole way through. What are your feelings about that? Because, like, when he hears that he has to be doing this job for women, like he has to sell this stuff for women, he scoffs at that. He's like, oh. And he gets a lack of confidence and he flounders and he's like, oh, Jesus. Why did they put that in there?
I thought in that moment it was more of a thing of like, oh, you're asking me to, put a circle block in a square hole or something like that because it's a brand that's not for women normally.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was like, oh, the goofy boss is asking me to do something, not normal.
It's sports attire. That's all he's selling. Women do sports. You could sell sports attire to women. Like, it's not that big of a square hole, I
don't know. It's just
my first thought was like, I see women in exercise clothes so often in my life.
I thought it was just like a brand thing.
Yeah, but he's like, the brand's so old that no one recognizes it. And he has a big speech later on where it's like, your methods won't work because of this. And his whole big speech that he gives on like how to do this isn't gender-based.
Yeah, it's about age.
Exactly.
It's like the film kind of forgot.
Exactly. But he has a problem with it being gender-based because he only knows how to sell to guys. He only knows how to cater to guys, and the only thing he knows about getting women is how to get them in bed. That's all he knows when it comes to women. See, we're having a bit more back and forth about it than it did.
Yeah.
It brought it up. The film put this in there. Why didn't it do anything with it? What did it do instead? What did the film do instead? Played a lot of songs.
There were a lot of songs. Every time one started, I'm like, oh, okay, we're not going to have dialogue for a minute or two.
Did you have a favorite?
I
did.
There was one where it was like, I left my house when I was sad. I went to the park and I stood on the bridge.
And it showed those things. My favorite was when he went on the plane to Yemen and it played Big Jet Plane as the song. And he's like, I got on a big jet plane. Yay, yay. And I'm like, fuck, what is this, Zack Snyder? With his obvious needle drops? Fuck me. This is not worthy of being talked about anymore. I'm done. No questions for Ben. Fuck you, Ben.
I looked up all the films we've done this year so far. Yeah, this was easily the weakest.
Bicentennial Man had merits. That was probably the weakest film we've done till now.
Oh, well, the film has a straight up amazing first half, so yeah.
Yeah, Sam Neill, which is always a winner. This, any questions for Ben is filled to the brim with a wonderful amount of Australian character actors.
And me.
And you. I was happy to see John Howard, the actor, playing the priest. He was very good. Like, there are good comedic beats and performances. Like, this film isn't without any good stuff, but the bad stuff and the just failures of the movie outweigh it. I would never recommend this to anyone. My life is lesser now. And I'm not joking when I say this. I have a bit of a sore throat because I kept groaning louder and louder when I watched this. And I did one groan that kind of caught at the back of my throat and I fucked my throat a little because any questions for Ben made me just keep going at it. And so no one check out this film. It's a void. I can't believe Rob Sitch made this. He's usually very good. I've enjoyed most of his work. Even the stuff that's not very good, I can say there's a heart. This is... Look, if he was making a horror film about humanity and how terrible we are, then this is a 10 out of 10. But he wants me to like this person. He wants me to feel for them. He wants me to applaud and clap and be wistful about the beauty of the rich and Melbourne's landscapes. And I'm sorry, but it's fucking failure. Thumbs down from me.
It's not a 0 out of 10 for me, but I also don't really recommend the film. I really wanted to like it because I'm in it, but yeah, unfortunately, my not enthusiastic enough performance during a moment where it should have been enthusiastic, didn't really save it for me.
Kind of says a lot about the movie.
I hope that other film I was in is better. I'm in the trailer of that one.
Does it bother you? And does it bother you that oftentimes, not always, I sometimes give you movies, but oftentimes the movies I loathe the most are ones you recommend in your cycle of recommendations?
I mean, I don't take it too personally. There's somewhat of an angle of like, I made Ryan upset by picking this film, but I know you don't take it to me that personally or anything like that.
I think sometimes it's because you also pick movies that you have this type of relationship to, where it's like slightly tangible,
very tenuous, yeah,
very tenuous. So it's not like you have an ability to sway me on it because you aren't swayed on it. While something like, if I give you the Neon Demon, you and I can debate about it for back and forth, and I could change your mind, you can change my mind, and back and forth.
Well, to be fair, one of the ones I recommended that you hated was Dude, Where's My Car?
Dude, Where's My Car?
Where it's one of the films I've watched the most probably when I was younger.
Very nostalgic. And I watched it too, but then it aged. But even then, there's something where we both have a history and a fondness for it, and my views had changed. But yeah, I was just wondering, because I was watching this, I'm like, oh man, I don't want to have to come in there and yell at Bartek about a movie he picked again. I feel like he never yells at me about movies I pick, and I pick movies sometimes to see if to test the waters with you sometimes. The Listening People's ones can be a gambit as well.
Oh, that one, we've got like no, sort of baggage, unless it's a film we're familiar with. Like, oh yeah, this film, someone recommended this film.
Yeah, well, there's a vibe. Like, oh, it's going to be a nearly 3-hour-long Polish film. There's a vibe. I think Bartek may have feelings.
We've said it before. The Listening People's Choice often feel like a mystery box.
Now it is my time to pick a film. And I am picking a film that actually I feel has some parallels to the one we just watched. But different, of course. I'm going to pick a film that, one, I put on the list because you said you hadn't seen it, and I thought you would like it.
Okay.
So just off of our conversation a moment ago, it's Larry Crowne, the Tom Hanks film with Julia Roberts. It's a film in which he has a midlife crisis and realizes, I need to change my life.
Okay.
And that's what I mean, where it's like, oh, we just watched a movie about like a quarter life crisis, about I need to change my life, and a character doesn't really do it. Let's watch a movie about a guy who's like, I need to change my life, and he actually does a bunch of stuff.
Part of me was wondering, like, is he going to, feed off the Mad Max in this film and just pick Fury Road? But
no.
You did feed off something.
It would be, Fury Road would be perfect right now because of the Mad Max stuff, but I need to try Larry Crowne. It's been on the list for a while. There are Mad Max actors in this film. Furiosa actors. The sleazy guy, the mentor.
I looked that up.
He's in Mad Max in two roles.
Yeah, he's the new Immortan Joe,
He's the new Immortan Joe, yeah. He's very good. And Rachel really likes that actor from the TV show Offspring, where he plays the kooky, like, head doctor. Clegg is the character's name. Very
good name.
He's very fun. He's a very fun character, and he's a very good actor. He was playing it a lot more Greek in this, by the way.
I was going to say, this felt like the Australian equivalent of like a Italian-American stereotype.
Yeah, but he's a Greek Australian stereotype. Like, he was very much playing it like that. He doesn't usually. So
I could see him maybe being on like a Fat Pizza type show.
Or Underbelly.
Hurting our friend Liam.
Well, Liam was in the web series spin-off of Offspring called The Nurses, where Liam, our teaching friend, our friend of the pod and our university
Listen to
teacher,
our episodes on Year One and The Guilt Trip.
He used his own baby in that as a prop.
Oh, okay.
In Nurses, and his character, I think, was gay. And he's like, here's my lovely baby from my husband. And he's like using his actual real life baby, waving the baby's arms and like juggling them around as like a funny haha prop. Very good. If I had a child, I'd do that.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, listening people, for slogging on through my misery of any questions for Ben and Bartek's modernity with it. Just like, yeah, it happened. Did you like the scene in which he got the big hotshot fast car and he didn't know how to drive it a bit?
I like this. I like the minor running gag of him trying to open the boot and be like, "Oh, this is the wrong side."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you love the nudity that kind of popped up in the movie?
I can't believe they put underage me in a film with tits.
That's how
on Stan, it's I think M because of coarse language and sex scene.
There's more than one sex scene, but yes. There's one with
according to Stan, the Australian streaming service, is just sex.
No, your big brother Stan. We don't talk about Stansky very much. We don't talk about your big brother Stansky very much.
Did I say Stansky?
No, I'm saying because he's Polish. Stan, we should call him for short.
Stanisław.
That's
a Polish name.
See, Bartek speaks the language. He knows.
I sang a lullaby earlier.
You people, you can recommend films to us and you can follow us on social media. All of that is in the description below. We take your recommendations, we put them in a list, and we eventually get around to them. Perhaps you will ask for us to do any questions for Ben again, and we won't do it because we don't repeat. We've never come back to a movie.
I'm curious if we'll ever somehow justify on Pictures Power an unappreciated masterpiece we've done.
Oh, we just do Big Fat Liar again. Talking about Big Fat Liar, breaking news. Well, not really. It's a bit old, but breaking for you, perhaps. Paul Giamatti has been cast in Star Trek.
Oh, yeah?
As the villain of the Starfleet Academy television series.
Wow.
We don't know what he will be playing, if he's a human, an alien, but we know he's going to be the central villain of the first season.
Well, he has been a sci-fi villain in the film before. Ratchet and Clank.
Ratchet and Clank. Getting the G-Man in Star Trek, modern Star Trek, is both like a joy and a curse. It will be the Star Trek show that I will make Bartek watch.